Hello and welcome back to The Drag Detective, where today we are going to be talking about a couple of queens from multiple franchises who basically had no shot at the crown or even making the finale in some cases because production simply just did not see them as competition, as someone they wanted to be around for a while or give credit to or give wins to, all of that. Basically the most overlooked queens consistently in Drag Race herstory. But before we get into that, I finally am here to announce, and if you've been following me on social media, you already know about it, but I've been teasing this for a while, and it's finally out into the world, and I'm so excited to talk about Drag Duel. Drag Duel is an upcoming drag competition series that will be on YouTube, hosted by myself, Bootsy, and Zelda Vox. We are going to have our own little drag competition where 12 drag artists from all walks of life, from all around the world, all types of drag, are going to compete for a grand prize of $2,500, as well as weekly prizes and the love of all of you watching. We are currently casting. There's only a couple days left to apply, so if you are a drag artist, a drag queen, a king, a monster, a monarch, a non-binary performer, and you think you have what it takes to compete in an online competition, the link to apply will be in the description below, as well as all of the social media accounts for Drag Duel. We also just launched an Indiegogo account. This is not going to be probably monetized on YouTube, so all of our expenses are coming out of our pockets. So if you want to help and make this the best series that it can be, we would greatly appreciate your help with our Indiegogo campaign. That link will also be in the description below. Make sure you're following Drag Duel on all the social media accounts so that you know when the updates are coming, when casting is done, when the show is about to drop. We have to meet the drag artists, all of the things that will be coming out. I'm very excited for it. It is the biggest project that I personally have ever taken on, and I'm just really pumped to get this thing going. So thank you to everyone who's applied. We have almost 100 applicants already, and I'm sure after I put this out, we're gonna get a bunch more. So thank you to everyone who's applied, and go check out Drag Duel. Also, just a quick note, I know my videos have been a little bit more sporadic this month, and it's because this month that's been crazy. This month has been wild for me. I've had engagement parties, vacations, seeing Taylor Swift on the Eras Tour, all of these things. Next week, there will be no video. I will be on vacation in Salem, Massachusetts. But in July, we will go back to regular weekly video drops. My world will go back to normal, and everything will be fine in the world. So I'm sorry if I've been a little bit sporadic on Instagram and YouTube and all of that this month. It has been insane. But okay, that's all the stuff we have to talk about before this video. Now let's get into the 7 most robbed queens in Drag Race herstory. First up, let's talk about what I think is one of the most obvious ones. It's one that people talk about a lot. It's been brought up a lot. I've talked about it on my channel. There's been other videos about it. And it's just like when I think of one queen from the show who production truly didn't give a shit about, who didn't want, and their endgame didn't want to make it to that like final 5, final 4, I think of Aja on All Stars 3. Now, Aja's story starts off a little bit different than a lot of these other queens because in the first episode of All Stars 3, Aja gets a win. She wins the Maxi Challenge, which was the talent show, along with Ben de la Creme. And while she doesn't win the lip sync, she, is considered a winner of that episode, the top 2. So going into that season, she had these really, really high hopes on season 9. She was a huge name in the drag scene. And when she went on season 9 and underperformed, I think people were really kind of shocked by that. So her coming back right off the bat, she literally went from season 9 to All Stars 3. Like, there was no gap in between. I think people were also a little bit worried that, does she have what it takes to do this on the show? I mean, we know she's a great drag artist out there in the world, but Drag Race is very different. It doesn't always translate. But Aja proved that she was a fantastic Drag Race contestant on All Stars 3. Right off the bat, jumps off the box, wins the talent show. And from there on out, if this was season All-Stars 6, All-Stars 8, this kind of vibes where we have a lot of early outs coming in, getting their underdog arcs and, making it to the end, like a Raja or a Kylie, or like as we've seen on All-Stars 8, Lala Rhea is in the top 5. I think Aja would have been at the end of this season. But because All-Stars 3 had so many heavy hitters and queens that I think production just wanted to see succeed more, Aja then immediately gets kind of shoved into the background. It was kind of like, okay, you had your moment to shine, cool, the moment is past. We're moving on, and your storyline is over. And we'll keep you around for as long as we can, but once all of those people that we don't really give a shit about are out, you're next, bitch. And that's exactly what happened. Every single episode after the first episode, I would bump her placement up one. If she was in the bottom, I would have bumped her up to low. If she was safe, I would have bumped her up to high. If she was high, I would have bumped her up to a win. Going through the episodes, episode 2 was the Divas Live Challenge. I think she could have been high over like Bibi Zahara Benet. She did a wonderful Amy Winehouse impression and performance. And then her runway, that episode was also 10 out of 10 stunning. Whereas Bibi's was, it was fine, but it wasn't super elevated. Episode 3, it's the Bitchler. And for the first time in the season, we have a bottom 3, not a bottom 2. And Aja, I think, would have been that low placement if they had a bottom 2. Specifically because I don't think she was horrible in the Bitchler, but also her runway, it was the Wigs on Wigs on Wigs, was one of the best. It was this like anime, like insane inflatable fantasy. It was so good, and I think she should have just been low. I don't know why they made it a bottom 3, except to kind of like knock Aja down a peg. She'd been doing too good, and this was her first stumble, so she definitely needs to be in that bottom. Episode 4 was the Snatch Game, where she did Crystal LaBeija. We didn't see a ton of her in the edit, but for what we did see, she was fantastic. And I think that Shangela's Jennifer Lewis is kind of one of those Snatch Games that kind of gets overemphasized over time. Like, going back and watching it, it's fine, it's good, but it's nothing crazy. It's nothing spectacular. I think Aja's Crystal LaBeija was more in character and funnier, to be honest with you, and I would have put Aja in that top 2 with Ben de la Creme over Shangela. And then we go to her elimination episode, which was the Warhol Ball, which, like, we all know she was robbed. I mean, she should not have been in the bottom. They rip her to shreds. They make her seem like she doesn't know her references and she's just this little kid who doesn't know what she's talking about. And it's embarrassing for her, I'm sure. And it's kind of just cringy to watch. And, it really did feel like they were just trying to knock her down. Like, Aja, you are not as good as you think you are. You're not doing as well as you think you're doing, and you need to get the fuck out of here. And they sent her home. And this is what I mean by this video. Like, Aja was doing consistently well, and production just did not give her the credit for it multiple times. I mean, there's a way that Aja makes it to the very end of the season, that she makes the top 4 with multiple wins, but instead, she barely makes it to the halfway point with only 1 win and 1 high placement. And I just think that she did so well. Even the next episode, when she's trying to fight her way back in, doing the Sitting on a Secret, she's the standout of her group, but she doesn't get to come back. I just feel like there were so many circumstances on the season where Aja was just not given what she deserved, not given the flowers she deserved, not given the placements that she deserved. And to me, I think it's very obvious that production did not care about Aja, that they had many other queens that they were more interested in see make the end and be more main characters on the season. And, I'm really happy that we got to see Aja come back on All Stars 8 as a lip sync assassin, just to kind of remind everyone, like, I am that bitch. Like, no matter what my placement says, no matter what my track record says, I am that bitch. And I would love for her to come back and for her to actually get her flowers and her wins and everything that she deserves on Drag Race. Let's go over to UK, where we have another pretty extreme case, but it's a kind of different case where Aja's story was like, you're just not as important to us as a lot of these other queens on the season. This queen, the judges just did not appreciate or understand their drag, and that is Charity KASE. So Charity KASE is, I think, a very strange choice to cast on a Drag Race season, only because her type of drag is not usually seen on the show. She does this very grimy, dirty, genderfuck, horror, totally different than the polished type of drag that we see on Drag Race. Not saying that her drag isn't polished, it's just specifically not polished. And calling it unpolished isn't like a critique or anything. It is, her drag is meant to be unpolished. It's meant to have this kind of dirt and grime and gross factor. And I just don't think the judges ever saw that as elevated in a way that it actually is. I think a lot of people more would have seen Charity on Dragula, just because that kind of drag style is more appreciated over there. I mean, that's more what they're looking for over there. And, as excited as I was to see Charity KASE on Drag Race, I was very quickly just kind of like, damn it, because they're not getting her. They're not appreciating her type of drag. And she's really just being cast aside for some of these other more pretty, polished, typical drag queens that we see on Drag Race. And it was really frustrating to watch. Episode 1, they have to present 2 runways, and both of her runways, I think, show who she is as a drag artist, fit the categories that are given to them, and also are extremely out of the box, extremely, I want to say polished, but, like, she's specifically not polished, so, like, you know what I mean. She had amazing looks, for sure should have been in the top 3, if not the top 2. There's an argument to be made that she's in that top 2 in lip syncs for the win against either Victoria or Crystal. But she was safe. And I was so shocked. I was so surprised. And then in episode 2, she is in the low placement, which is valid based on her challenge performance. But in the runway, she shows them this kind of like, this like 1920s style makeup and look, and it's very chic, it's very elevated, it's very polished, and it's very what you would expect more from like a Drag Race runway. But instead of them appreciating it, they tell her that the look is wearing her. Like, this look is too much, it's wearing you, you're not wearing it, and she kind of gets dismissed for that. Episode 3 is the camping ball thing where they have to bring a look, and I think it's like a Girl Scout look. And then the other look is something that they make from like camping materials. Her first look, this like evil like Friday the 13th bunny, was so cool. It fit the theme, it would fit Charity's drag. It was super fun. And then the second look that she made, I think that the front looked a lot better than the back, but overall it was a really, really strong look, a very, very more girly look for Charity, and she ends up just safe. Even though basically all of the queens who were in the top got critiqued for their looks. Like, no one just got like good critiques across the board. They didn't like this thing about Ella's jacket. They didn't like this thing about Crystal's look. They didn't like this thing about Scarlett's look. So there could have been a spot for Charity in that high spot. And instead, she was just safe yet again. Next up, we have the girl group challenge, where she does what Charity KASE would do in a girl group challenge, which is not being this, like, you know, Spice Girl superstar. It was a little bit weirder and a little bit more grungy, and I thought she did a good job. But she's put into the bottom over someone like Crystal Versace, who gave kind of just the most bland, basic performance that we've seen it. We've seen this performance a million times. You didn't bring us anything new. You didn't bring us anything elevated. And on top of that, for her Spice Girls runway, Night of 1,000 Spice Girls, she is completely destroyed for wearing a look that they said is not Spice Girls at all, even though the prompt that they were given on their like dossier said, your interpretation of a Spice Girls look. Do your interpretation. And that's what she did. And then they say, actually, this is not Spice Girls at all. You were supposed to give us like a replica, and this is nothing like, I think she was Scary Spice. This is nothing like Scary Spice at all. So you flopped. And she's put into the bottom, but she saved in a double Shantae, only to be then unfairly eliminated the very next episode, which was the Drag Lexa challenge, where there's 2 teams, and they each have to make a commercial. She is on Crystal Versace's team, where Crystal Versace is the leader. She's supposed to be leading, and she's not leading at all. So Charity KASE steps up and helps the group out and does what she can to make their commercial as good as it is. Then she is punished for like taking over, even though like someone had to, and all the blame is put on her for how bad the commercial is, not Crystal for not stepping up as the team leader. And then again, her runway, which is so fun, is completely destroyed. And they say, we've seen it, we've seen you do the scary. We want to see like glamour. Even though she's given 2 very good glamour looks that, was paid dust by the judges. And really, at the end of the day, they didn't appreciate and they didn't understand Charity KASE. And it's kind of sad because like you would hope that a drag performer so out of the box as Charity would have his place on Drag Race. And this just kind of showed us that, like, they don't. Next up, let's talk about a queen that basically inspired this video. I was so upset with how this queen was treated that I stopped watching the season. And that is Clover Bish on Drag Race Espana 3. Now, if you want to see a really good Espana video where they break down Clover. They break down the favoritism. They break down why the season isn't working. Go check out Black Boy on TikTok's video. He made his YouTube channel, and he put out his first video on Drag Race Espana 3. Yes, this season is so bad that it forced him to start a YouTube channel to rant about it. But it's a really good video. It breaks down all of the things that just don't work with Espana 3. And go watch him, subscribe to him, and support him because he is an icon. Okay, so Clover Bish on Drag Race Espana 3. Again, it's like you would hope that a cis woman on Drag Race, which is, you know, besides Victoria Scone, not something we've seen, would be uplifted, supported, and all of the things that you want to see from, like, you know, this big moment of a cis drag queen on Drag Race. It's not something we see very often. And for her to just be kind of shuffled to the side the entire season and, you know, put in the bottom and not given wins, and it really just felt like they never saw her as a contender. And even when she was doing really well, they were like, well, we can't have that. So the very best we'll give you is a high placement, but there's no way you're making this finale, bitch. We will not let that happen, not on our watch. And, you know, she has so much charisma. She's so fun to watch. Her drag is so polished. She's so stunning. I just don't know what they didn't see in her. Other than that, she was a cis woman. Like, I can't think of another reason why they would not want Clover as, like, a contender for the crown going into the finale with multiple wins, which is what she should have been on this season. You know, episode 2, the dance challenge, she could have won that. Like, she definitely could have won that. And instead, the win goes to Pink Shadora, which, like, go watch Matthew's video because he goes into the favoritism of Pink Shadora. I mean, I really think Clover could have won over Shadora very easily. In the next episode, it's the ball. She was low, but, like, she could have been safe and Pink Shadora could have been low. And I'm not saying it's, like, fully rigged that she was low, but, like, she could have been safe and Pink Shadora could have been in her spot and it would have made sense. The Rusical is really when I was like, oh, they hate her. They hate her. They want this bitch gone. Home. Off of this soundstage. Like, gone. And the way that they spoke about her, the way that they spoke to her in this Rusical where they didn't get to choose their parts, they were assigned the role that they were given. She's given this role that doesn't really have much dancing. And then they're like, you know, you're a dancer, so, like, you should have danced. And, like, that's something she has no control over. She didn't pick the role. She didn't pick the choreography. All of these things were handed to her by production, by the choreographers, all of this stuff. She had no say. And then they're like, well, Clover, you gotta be in the bottom too, because you're a dancer and you didn't dance. And that was just so insane to me. It was so insane to me. And it really felt like they gaslit her for real. Because they gave this to her. And then they're like, that's not what we wanted from you. Well, give her what you want then. She manages to survive this lip sync though, and then goes on a 2-episode high streak where she could have won both of these episodes. The stand-up, she was put on, like, her own. It was very much like a Marsha moment where she's like, I don't know, like, I'm kind of nervous to be alone when everyone else is partnered up, but she actually does really, really well. And I think could have won that episode. And it would have been a great storyline, a great comeback moment for her. And then the next episode, it's the improv. She's partnered with Petita, and they are really funny. And in the beginning of the episode, Supreme is like, the best team wins. And then after they're clearly the best team, both of them, only Petita gets the win, and Clover's left in a high placement, high and dry, as, you know, Radiohead would say. It just really felt like, damn, they really don't want to give her a win. They changed their own rules for how they were going to judge this challenge just so they didn't give Clover Bish a win. And that's when I stopped watching. I saw that and I was like, I'm good. I know she goes home the next episode in the makeover. Couldn't tell you if it was deserved or not because I didn't watch. And I'm not going to watch because it was just so infuriating. It was so infuriating. And, you know, especially when we are having these conversations, especially after seeing Victoria Scone on Canada versus the World, where, like, there are a lot of people who don't think there is room for cis women in drag spaces. And that's fucked up. And I think that's wrong. So having a cis woman who's doing super well on your competition, but refusing to let her shine, refusing to let her, you know, get her flowers and get the wins that she deserves, it's just reinforcing what other people think, that Yeah, I mean, why would Clover get a win? She's a woman. Like, she's a cis woman. You know, this space isn't for her. That's what I think some people could get from this. And I think it's dangerous. I think it's unfair. And I just think it's gross. I think it's really gross. Especially because, like, there's no other reason why I could think that they wouldn't give Clover the wins and the storyline that she deserved, which was being Petita's biggest competition in the endgame. Having this, you know, huge comeback storyline after kind of struggling a little bit in that midpoint of the competition, she could be sitting here with 3 wins. She could be sitting here with 3 whole wins going into the finale. She didn't even make the finale, and she had 0. It's fucked up. It's really, really fucked up. And that's what makes me angry, is when you're dealing with real, in-the-world storylines. Like, we're gonna have a cis woman, and we're gonna see what happens. And then you don't give her the same treatment that you give everyone else. It just makes you feel icky watching it. Really icky. Really gross. So I stopped. Let's stay in our international waters and talk about someone from Canada season 1, a notoriously rigged season. And I wanted to offer a different approach, a different reason why production doesn't see someone. It's not because they're a cis woman, it's not because they just don't get their drag, and it's not because they have other queens they need to prioritize. This is a different storyline, and we've actually seen it twice, but I wanted to talk about this one person instead of the other, because there's just more like to go off of, and it is TYNOMI Banks on Canada season 1. And the storyline here is that coming into the season, TYNOMI is a huge name. She has a lot of accomplishments. She has a great resume under her belt already before coming into Drag Race. And then the story that they decide to push is, you know, it doesn't matter how good you are outside of these sugar walls, it matters what you do here. So I don't care that you're successful, TYNOMI, because guess what? You suck. That's basically the storyline that they gave her. Her critiques were so harsh. And even when she was getting some of the critiques, you could see that she was like, what the fuck? And, you know, season 1, it's a disaster. It's a complete disaster. I have a great video about it, all of that. This is one of the things that made me the maddest, because did TYNOMI kill every challenge? No. Episode 2, she was very much deservedly in the bottom for the acting challenge. But episodes 3 and 4, where she ends up in the bottom, there are so many other people that could have been in that bottom 2 instead of her, specifically in the dance challenge, where like half the queens didn't know the choreo, half the queens didn't know what they were doing on that stage. TYNOMI was one of them, but there were plenty of other queens who were doing, I would say, worse than her. And she still ended up in the bottom 2 with Anastasia, which, to be fair, you could say her runway was terrible that episode. It was really bad, and that is the reason why she was in the bottom 2. But even let's say that's true. Episode 4, she also, I don't think really deserved to be in the bottom. It's the design challenge. They're in teams, and they have to make like a collection of looks. Her and Alona end up in the bottom 2, and their looks are, they say crafty, but their material was paper. I would say that is the hardest material to make a look out of, because it's not durable, it can fall apart easily, it can rip, all of these things. I think that is a very hard job to do, and I think they did a good job. They had a theme, all of these things. Team Metal was a mess. It was a mess. And I think you very easily could have had a Priyanka and Boa bottom 2, and it would have made a lot of sense. But instead, TYNOMI had to go, because we don't care that you're successful. Here, you're not. I mean, that's really what Brooke was saying in her critiques, specifically where she's like, you know, I don't know where your head's been at, but you've been, you know, nowhere to be seen this entire competition. And TYNOMI's like, what the fuck? And, you know, we see this storyline happen again on Drag Race UK 2 with Joe Black, who comes in with the biggest name, the most credentials, the biggest resume, all of that, and is sent home unfairly in episode 1 to show the girls basically anybody can go home. It doesn't matter how good you are outside of the workroom, because what really matters is what happens. And it's just like, can we just watch successful people be successful? Like, can't that just be it? You know what I mean? Like, why does it have to be this whole, like, this big moment of, like, oh, TYNOMI Banks, like, destroyed on Drag Race, or, like, Joe Black, first out? Like, we don't need that to, like, make a good storyline. I would much rather just watch both of them slay on Drag Race. Make it far in Drag Race. You know what I mean? Let's go back to the US and talk about my favorite season of Drag Race, All Stars at least, All Star 6, where we have a queen who I'm not actually sure why, but they just did not feature her that season. They were not understanding what she was doing. They weren't appreciating what she was doing. and they've sent her home as fast as they possibly could. And that is Akira Chanel Davenport, aka one of the best drag queens literally in the world. I mean, the level of drag that she showed on All Star 6 that she's showing right now on her Instagram, it is next level, and I don't think she gets the appreciation that she deserves. Akira has one of those track records where I think the episode that she goes home regardless. Like, I don't think that is rigged at all, but her track record before that could have been so much better. In episode 2, it's the blue ball, and all of her looks are critiqued, even though I think she was very safe this episode. I appreciated the comedy of her first look. I appreciated how stunning she looked in her second. And I appreciated that she used a lot of unconventional materials in her third. She's put in a low position over people like Pandora, over people like Silky Nutmeg Ganache, over people like Ginger Minj, who I think had way more issues with their looks than Akira. We go to the halftime show, which is a couple of episodes later. She does Prince, and she does a really good job. She does a really good job as Prince. She looks great. Her dance moves are great. Her just energy is very Prince. And then on the runway, she delivers what might be the best look of the entire season with her frills look. And she is put into the bottom 2. And it was insane. I mean, I remember when that episode came out, people were like stunned. And to this day, I still don't understand. They said that she needed to be bigger than Prince and, princier than Prince. But I thought she did a good enough job to at least be safe. And she ended up in the bottom 2. She narrowly stayed, only for the next episode for what could have potentially been her one win of the season to be taken away from her and given to someone who did not deserve to win at all. It's the Pink Table Talks. She is on the best team, the team that RuPaul says, you are the best team. It was her, Eureka, and Trinity K. Bonet. I think the win could have gone to either her or Eureka, probably more Eureka than Akira, but she was very closely, in that race. And instead, Ginger Minj, who was on the worst team, got the win. And it just kind of undermined Akira, because it's like, well, it doesn't matter that you're the best team, because guess what? We like Ginger more anyway. She then goes home the very next episode, and it just felt like she was at a level of drag that was so above and beyond what so many other people on that season were doing, but the judges did not care and did not want her around. And it just really sucks, because I think she is so talented and so stunning and so good at drag. And I just feel like because of that season, she's kind of overlooked now among the fans. So go appreciate and follow and do all the things to support Akira Chanel Davenport, because she is still out there fucking killing it. Next, we are going to talk about JAIDYNN DIORE Fierce on Drag Race Season 7. So JAIDYNN is, again, I think it's one of those instances where I think she goes home in the episode she goes home in regardless, but I think that she would have had a much better track record if they just appreciated her more and saw her more for what she was actually doing. And I think with that better track record, we already would have seen her back on Drag Race, on All Stars. She's so good. She's such a fun personality. She's so good at what she does, but the fandom, I think, does forget about her. The bigger fandom. I think that she does get appreciated by, super fans who are she's underrated. But, to the GP, I don't think they appreciate JAIDYNN DIORE Fierce nearly as much as they should. So, the second that I realized they do not want JAIDYNN DIORE Fierce to win, they don't see her towards, being an endgamer, any of this, was in episode 4, where she very clearly won the episode. I talked about this in my Rig Season 7 video. It was the parody challenge, and she parodies Bianca Del Rio and plays her in the music video, and it is so funny. She has the makeup and the look all down, and the mannerisms and the catchphrases, and it's so funny. And she's said that she's the best of her team, but she's just in the top, and they give the win to Kennedy Davenport, who I don't think deserved to win at all this challenge. Then we see, just a couple of episodes later, they're doing the What Had Happened to Merle Ginsburg acting challenge, and JAIDYNN struggles, kind of like she did on the Shakespeare set, where she's just not confident in herself. But the final product of JAIDYNN, she's playing RuPaul, is fine. It's fine. Was there a struggle to get there? Yes, but it was fine. There was plenty of other performances that I think were worse. Miss Fame and Pearl, and, there were people who just didn't bring it as much as her. She ends up in the bottom 2, and it was to send home Candy Ho. Because, all of the other queens who did badly would not have won a lip sync against Candy Ho, and they needed Candy Ho out of there. So JAIDYNN was kind of the only option of like the bottom half of queens to send her home. So they put her in the bottom, even though I don't think she deserved it, and she does send Candy Ho home. But she then kind of becomes the perennial lip sync assassin who just ends up in the bottom until she goes home. The very next episode, she sends home Max in the Snatch game, even though I think she was much, much better in the Snatch game than Miss Fame. I think that JAIDYNN could have been low and it would have been deserved, but like bottom 2 over Miss Fame's Donatella Versace, when she at least had a couple jokes land as Raven Simone, I think that it was really, really kind of rigged. And I think that they didn't want Miss Fame to go home, and they were willing to sacrifice Max, and JAIDYNN had to be the one to send her home, because we know Miss Fame wasn't about to win a lip sync. JAIDYNN goes home the next episode. I don't think it was rigged, but like I said, if she had a much better track record, a win under her belt and all of these things, she, I think, could have easily come back for All Stars. And I know that she's been an alternate at times and things like that. There's definitely some interest in production to have JAIDYNN back, but like, it would have been so much more, and I think she would have been on a season by now if she had won her challenge on episode 4. And I think she would have been more appreciated by the fandom, because she's one of these forgotten queens from an older season that just kind of gets lost in the shuffle of like how long the show has been on now. Our last queen that we're going to talk about, and I save this one for last because I think it might be my hot take of this video. Let me know what you think. I'm talking about Yvie Oddly on All-Star 7. All-Star 7, you guys know, is not one of my favorite seasons. I don't like it as much as everyone else does. And one of the reasons was because it felt like, there was already a predetermined outcome. Like, Jinx was going to win, Monet was going to be at the end, Shea was going to be at the end, Trinity. The queens with the biggest followers ended up in the top 4. And, like, I don't think that is, like, a shocker. You know what I mean? And I feel like Yvie really does get sidelined as, like, I mean, her and Jada both as, like, the newer winners. And they don't necessarily have, like, as long of a legacy to, like, uphold, if that makes sense. Like, if Jinx Monsoon or, like, Raja Gemini come back on All-Star 7 and flop, it's way more, like, like, a insane moment than, like, if Jada came back and flopped. Because there's so many years in between where, you know, people have been wanting them back on an all-winners, and, like, they would win it, and they would slay it, and they would do this and this and that. So they have to do well, because it's just for, you know, for their reputation. And, you know, they weren't trying to make this season and have any of the winners look bad. I mean, they really wanted to make all the winners look great. And unfortunately, there's just some that they cared about more to look great. And Yvie was not one of them. I think a lot about that improv challenge where they were like fairy tale characters in, like, what was it, Fairy Tale Justice? And Yvie played in both scenes as the big bad wolf. And she was so good in both scenes. She had more to do than anybody else, and she managed to stand out in both scenes. But she was given a high placement, but not a win, and I think she very much deserved a win there. She had more to do, and she still managed to make it all work and make it all funny. And then even in, like, the Draguation challenge, like, I think that she approached these challenges a little bit differently than queens like Vivienne and Jinx did, where she always brought this, like, humanity to it. She always brought this, like, rawness and, like, this is who I am, and I'm going to bring my experiences. I'm going to bring my life. I'm going to bring all of this to these challenges. And I feel like that was always overlooked for just comedy. You know, Jinx was always playing a character. Vivienne was always playing a character. Raja was always playing a character. And, like, yes, that's funny. But in some of these challenges, it felt like I appreciated more the queens who were funny and managed to, like, bring themselves into it. Specifically the Draguation and the dance challenge. Like, even the roast. Like, there's so many moments where, like, I just appreciated how real she was, how grounded she was, how she was bringing herself to all of this. And I felt like she always got overlooked for someone else playing a funny character. And then even in that final lip sync against Raja, for, I don't remember what they called it, but it was like the lip sync of the losers tournament where they were going to win $50,000. She won that final lip sync. Like, she won. She had that fake out where, like, you thought she lost her wig because she had the wig cap, and then she ripped off the wig. I mean, that was a new fun way to do a wig reveal. It was ingenious. It was so good. And RuPaul's face after it was literally like, because in her mind, Raja had already won. Like, Raja was going to get the flowers. Raja was going to get the recognition and all of that. Because Raja's legacy just means more than Evie's, because she's been around for so much longer. She's been a winner for so much longer. She has so much more of the franchise like on her back with Fashion Photo Review and all of these things that she's done, hosting the pit stop. Evie had only been a winner for I think 2 years when they started filming. She's not as high on the priority list as some of these legacy queens. And by them not giving her that lip sync win and that $50,000, that was them saying, we don't really care how you do on the season. We're going to give the wins and everything to the people who we like more. is really what I got from it. So I think Evie was very much overlooked and unappreciated on All Star 7. And based on some of the tweets that she's put out since the season has ended, I think she agrees with me. So that is my list of 7 queens who I think are overlooked. There are definitely more, but these are the ones that I found the most examples and the most like consistency in. If you think that there's someone that I should add or maybe take away from this list, let me know in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. Again, the links to Drag Duel and all of that stuff is in the description below, as well as Matthew Belak's video and his channel will be there as well. I love you guys so much. I'm gonna go on vacation for a week and come back so refreshed, so shiny and new. And you know, we're nearing the end of All Stars 8, and that regular video will be long. Let's just say that. If you're not already, subscribe so you don't miss it. Check out the rigged recap if you want to see how I'm feeling about All Stars 8 in general. I just had Runner Eye on. My next guest will be Zelda Vox, who will be one of my co-hosts on Drag Duel. So if you want to get to know her better, go listen to that episode when it comes out for the rigged recap. That is everything going on in my life, with the channel and without. So I think we have covered everything. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you all in the next one.